who's going to be the next president. Will it be re-electionist Donald Trump, or will it be former Vice President Joe Biden? Welcome to the program agenda, and today we are going to dedicate a large part of our program to figuring out what's going to happen, because now the U.S. election is dubbed as the most divisive, threatening, socially disintegrating election they've ever had. You have a re-electionist president who, before the elections, has threatened to challenge, question, and to fight the outcome of the elections if he loses. And you have a former vice president, aspiring presidential candidate, Joe Biden, basically saying that if Donald Trump gets re-elected, it is going to be hell in America and hell for the world. In any case, we will find out more about those talking points with our guests. We will have with us today Professor Herman Joseph Kraft, Department of Political Science Chairperson of the University of the Philippines in Diliman, and Professor Clarita Carlos, Political Science Professor in the University of the Philippines in Diliman. After discussing the U.S. elections and its possible outcome, we will shift to cybercrime research and Trend Micro, a company that is engaged in cybersecurity, and very timely because if you haven't heard about it yet, you have not read about it, yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the online portal of ABS-CBN was hacked, and they were off air for like 9 hours. So it's been reinstated, I believe, but we will talk about that. It's a sad thing because a lot of people are dependent on ABS-CBN, whether in its former form or it's in new format. Many people in the province have been loyal and dependent on ABS-CBN, especially in a disaster. So we'll carry on. But in the meantime, let's go to the front page of the Philippine Star for your glimpse of the news. At the top of the front page, we have 7 Abu Sayyaf bandits killed in sea clash by the military. Then you have a photo of Joe Biden casting. That's Les Otten. Sorry, I saw that wrong. Dropping a ballot in a ballot box after midnight for the U.S. presidential election, and then you have America votes amid threat of election turmoil. And then, of course, the main headline is President Rodrigo Duterte stating many corrupt officials to lose their jobs. A small headline in the box, slow-moving storm Shawnee slightly intensifies. Bahagya pong lumalakas ang bagyong Shawnee. Hindi natin malaman kung yan ay talagang mananalasa sa Pilipinas o hindi, but please be careful. And on the lower part of the front page, actually the whole front page, if you saw it, the big photo is about homes that were submerged, covered, run over by boulders in the town of Ginobatan, Albay. In any case, continuing to the lower half of the front page, doctors on boats sail for typhoon victims, while Vice President Leni Robredo inspects the damage caused by Super Typhoon Rolly during her visit to Catanduanes. And finally, the government officials quote, "Red baiting is not a government policy. The communists are tagging themselves," according to armed forces officials and security officials. And last but not the least, Senator Manny Pacquiao welcomes AirAsia CEO Ricky Isla at the General Santos International Airport following the airline's inaugural Manila Gensan flight. Okay, there you go. So in the meantime, let's now go to the stories behind those front page headlines. President Rodrigo Duterte issued a warning against corrupt officials as the government's anti-corruption campaign goes into full swing. By next month, Duterte said dismissals, suspensions, and even prosecutions will come against erring officials. Duterte made the statement Monday during a meeting at the palace on the impact of Typhoon Rolly, where he presented a list of 60 PhilHealth and Bureau of Customs officials who were either suspended or dismissed due to corruption. State security officials said before the Senate that red tagging or red baiting is not a policy of the Duterte administration. National Security Advisor Herman Esperon Jr., who is also Vice Chairman of the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict, said that red tagging is inconsistent with the goals of the task force. The Senate panel held the hearing after the remark of ELCCAC spokesman Antonio Parlade towards actresses Lisa Soberano and Angel Locsin and Miss Universe 2018 Catriona Gray. And finally, the perhaps today's biggest news around the world, Americans went out to vote in the US presidential elections. Democratic presidential bet Joe Biden leads in almost every opinion poll. But Trump remains defiant as he counts on pulling off another upset. Despite Tuesday being election day, Americans have been voting for weeks via mail-in voting, especially with with COVID-19 pandemic. We will speak with two political science professors to know more about the matter and how this affects the Philippines. That's the story behind the headlines. Now let's go to our interview. Our first guest for today is a professor and chair of the Department of Political Science at the University of the Philippines at Diliman. He has been working on and published articles and book chapters on issues concerning ASEAN, regional security in Southeast Asia, security sector reform, and intrastate conflict in the Philippines. Let's bring in Professor Herman Joseph Kraft. Okay, there we
Morning,
go.
Cito.
Good morning, Professor. And I don't know, is that a Republican color or is that a Democrat color you're wearing?
It's actually the colors of my department.
Okay, sorry. I just needed to squeeze in that.
I know.
That in any case, while we are having a quick joke here, Professor Kraft, the fact is, I think every American all over the world, not just in the United States, are on pins and needles. They are worried, they're anxious, and they're hopeful on the outcome of the election. And I think part of the fear has to do with the threat of Donald Trump that if he doesn't win, there will be hell to pay. Now, what are your observations and assessment regarding this election?
Well, the interesting thing about it is the extent to which I think the this race has generated quite a bit of interest. You're talking about two-thirds of the American electorate actually voting before November 3. So that indicates to us just how much interest this is actually generated, and not only interest, but the extent to which you can see how much there is some concern about what's actually going on right now, and I think this has quite a bit of implications, no? Not just for the United States, but across the world, and I think that's where we actually come in. part
Mhm.
of the interesting thing about this is the question you're asking, for instance. No, it's not just Donald Trump actually. Yes, there's there's that threat that's hanging over the heads of the American electorate about how much he's not going to accept the current, I mean, the results, if the results show that he's actually going to lose. But at
Mhm.
the same time, um, it's really more of what this race represents, right? You're really looking at an electorate that's very, very deeply divided. And the question is uh, how much can act how much of this division can actually be healed, so to speak, by the next administration, whether it's Donald Trump, which is most people actually say it's unlikely that he's actually going to go for that, or a Biden administration actually taking over. Biden has presented himself as a unifier, as somebody who's going to unite the American people. But this is not about just the president or the next president. This is really an indication of how deeply divided the American electorate is. People in the United States are really very much polarized. Not only along parties, but along issue areas. That seem to move along those party lines.
Yeah, but Professor, let's address that issue of division because I think never before in the history of the United States, and I mean, I'm talking about the current history, has American society been divided the way it is now? Am I correct in saying that the division of nations is because of politicians? I had the impression during this the 2016 election, during the Trump administration, that the politics of the United States and even here in the Philippines, when we had our last election, it was a division of society and people, and it was generated by politicians or by their tacticians. Kumbaga, ang gumagawa ng away basag ulo ay yung mga tao ng mga kandidato. Am I
Mhm,
correct?
mhm.
And how will this affect the outcome?
Well, um, comparatively, the big difference between politics in the Philippines and politics in the United States, contextualizing things,
Mm.
is the importance played by party politics in the US now, which we don't have here in the
Mhm.
Philippines. Here it's very much personalistic, right? But the
Yeah.
interesting thing precisely is that there's this assessment that what one of the things that Donald Trump has actually done during the time that he's been president, and even when he was running the first time around, is how much he's actually um, insinuated himself into that political process, which like I said, is really run along party lines. Now suddenly we're talking about a Republican Party that's pretty much the party of Trump, right? And
Mhm.
that's not so much just Donald Trump himself, but what he represents in terms of what kind of politics he's introducing into the U.S. So in that sense, what's actually interesting here is the extent to which he has been able to uh, insinuate himself, into into a process where I think one of the things that he's actually been able to take advantage of is being able to tap into deep-seated resentments, if you will, uh,
Mhm.
that are inchoate really within the U.S. electorate, no, but that has created a base, no, for him that has been loyal and to a large extent has become a political factor in the way that the Republican Party itself, has to take into consideration how it conducts its politics. So, yeah, it's a deep-seated division, I think, that Donald Trump has taken advantage of. But I don't think it's not just about Trump. This is just something that's been building over time.
Mhm.
Um, and to a large extent, no, that division, while represented along party lines, no, is really about is increasingly about what those party lines define or what those party lines mean, represent, no, in terms of the issues that are actually important to them.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
but Professor, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to behave as your student,
Right.
uh, and ask these basic questions. Because monkey see, monkey do, and what they do in America, in the politics in America or Russia, America, as it was an issue before, kinokopya, ginagaya
Uh,
ng ibang bansa and
mm-mm.
ginagaya ng mga ibang presidentiables or and it wouldn't surprise me if some of the stuff that's happened or been said in this last campaign in the US is going to suddenly appear in our
Here.
next
Yeah.
presidential election. But is this about resentments, dissatisfaction that Donald Trump merely takes advantage of? Or is this a way of life? Kasi ang nadinig ko or nabasa ko quite often was the fight of the Democrats and the Republican is a class war. Is a war of a way of life. Kumbaga, the whites and the mixed races, the rich and the poor, etc. And we've seen part of that stuff happen here in the last election. Parang nahati yung Pilipinas between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, the provincianos, and the city dwellers. Hindi ba delikado yun? Isn't that dangerous for politicians to start tapping into hurts and pains of people? Because while it may be advantageous for you in an election, it can come back to bite us, in the future. Kumbaga parang nagumpisa ka kasi, kumbaga sa Rumble, ikaw tiga UP ka, no? Kumbaga
Mm.
may starter, o sige pinakamaliit, sige magpasuntok ka. Pagkatapos biglang pratuar na, biglang yun gang war na.
Ang well, ang ano kasi dito is that pag tinignan natin yung sitwasyon na yun, no, yung tanong mo, hindi ba masama ito over the long term? Oo,
Mm.
no, kasi parang ang isang problema dito ay hindi mo talaga nakikita kung ano ang kahihinatnan niyan eh.
Mhm.
You can't foresee, no, where it's actually going to go. The problem with and I think this is precisely the point as far as the nature of politics is concerned. If you're talking about institutionalized politics where you do have political parties, then may concern sila. There's some sort of concern about long-term implications, right? Because
Mm.
the party is still going to be there even after the candidate, right? Yun yung
Yeah.
isang ano doon. If, however, you have a political system, and I think this is where Donald Trump's insinuation of himself into the system comes in, no? Becomes personalistic, right? Or is about personality. Then it's about winning the next election. Very
Mm.
short-sighted, no? And implications or consequences be damned as far as the way you conduct your campaign, the way that you
Mhm.
actually try to work out your strategies and tactics, right?
Yeah.
But the problem there is, you're right. The thing there is that it's dangerous precisely because you don't know what's going to happen or what are the consequences of what you're actually doing. There is nothing to tell us that if you work on your base, for instance, you work them up, no, and then you get them to come out, vote for you, etc. You win that way. The question there is, are you sure that you're going to be in a position to try to get the other side, the people who didn't vote for you, to actually support whatever your policies are?
Mm.
Otherwise, it's going to be a politics of division,
Mhm.
wherein you're going to have long-term consequences. And one of the things that you're going to be constantly concerned about is, of course, criticisms, no, attacks, no, and so on. One of the things that one of the things that the new administration in the United States is going to have to face, no, whether it's a Trump administration or a Biden administration, is what to do with this division, right? Biden,
Yeah.
like I said, has framed himself as a unifier, but what is he going to do? How is he going to do that? No, when you do have deep-seated um, feelings, no, that Donald Trump was able to actually tap into and build up, no,
Yeah.
against the Democrats. On the other hand, Donald Trump, I don't think is going to be interested in trying to attract, the those who didn't vote for him to his side. That's not the way that he actually conducts his politics,
Hmm.
right? So, which means that um, whoever or whichever administration succeeds the Trump administration now, whether it's a continuation of Donald Trump or Joe Biden actually taking over, one of the things that has to be done is, or one of the things that they'll have to confront is how does one deal with these deep-seated divisions that you actually have in the American electorate right now?
Yeah, you now have a situation where you have a re-electionist with nothing to lose except his
Yeah.
face. I mean, if he wins, he's a president with nothing to lose. So chances are he's going to do what he wants, the way he wants to do. How does that play out for small countries like the Philippines, for small agrupations like ASEAN, whereas against Joe Biden? Because you're very informed with the ASEAN, etc. What are the concerns of this side of these nations if it's a Trump presidency, and what if it's a Biden presidency?
Okay. The geopolitical situation in the in the Indo-Pacific, as they refer to it now, no, is currently there's some sort of tug of war that's going on. The system that's been in place, what some people refer to as the regional architecture, in the Indo-Pacific, has been based on multilateral arrangements, cooperation, constant dialogues. That's not to romanticize what existed before Donald Trump actually came in, but to a large extent there was that understanding that regional politics would be based on the notion of countries in the region actually interacting with each other based on understood norms and rules based on those multilateral arrangements. Um, One of the things that Donald Trump has actually done when he actually came up as president is to suddenly raise questions about the virtues of cooperation, the idea of or the advantages of multilateralism, and essentially the introduction of transformative or transactional politics, in the region. What does this mean? It means that the United States is no longer aiming for being, or at least under his presidency, the United States is no longer does not seem to be interested in maintaining its position as leader, of a block of countries in the region. Essentially, what he's actually trying to do is saying that all of these countries in their so-called friends and allies have taken advantage of the United States, and in doing so, what he's going to try to do is to bring the United States back to its proper position, vis-a-vis all of these countries that have actually taken advantage of them. So
Professor,
trade, for instance,
y-
yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah, I was going to ask that question. Judging on his performance in the last 4 years, uh, did he accomplish much to the benefit of the United States? Because his direction has always been America first, us first. We don't need to be your security guard. We don't need to be your police. Uh, has he actually achieved what he set out to do? Or is it all smoke and mirrors? And will this translate into a re-election?
Um, One of the strong card that or the card that he holds to as a strong suit, in these elections, is the idea that he's the economic president, right? Under his presidency, the American economy has actually, reached record heights, so to speak, right?
Mhm.
But if we look at it, what were the things that, in terms of regional relationships, what were the things that he actually talked about? He was actually talking about the idea. Number one, he took the United States out of the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Program, which was supposed to create, another layer of multilateral cooperation, among high-performing economies in the region. He took the
Mhm.
United States out. That basically um, took the sales out of the TPP, and right now the current members, are still trying to find traction. Number two, he actually, which shows that he was actually, that one shows that he's not interested in multilateralism. The second thing that he said was that, look, bring jobs back to the United States, right?
Yeah.
All of those companies that invested in overseas, in overseas, no, he wants them to actually bring back. Number
Mhm.
three, trade. No, he said that the United States was actually disadvantaged by many of its trading policies. No, with many countries. Um, he targeted a number of countries. No, and China is a continuing one at this point in time. What happened? No, agriculture in the United States suffered because of the way that he actually introduced certain sanctions against China, for instance. Right? Soybean producers, no, find it very difficult finding alternative markets, no, for their produce because they couldn't sell to China. So
Mm.
you had those problems. Bring back jobs. Yes, because of some of the things that is actually done, a number of companies in China are actually finding other countries to actually invest in. Did they go back to the United States? No, they went to other countries like Vietnam, for instance. In fact, we were hoping that the Philippines would be one of the beneficiaries here. So to a large extent, no, um, there his promises have actually, or the things that he promised to do as far as his foreign policy in the Asia Pacific region is concerned, no, um, uh, didn't see the kinds of outcomes that he was actually promising. No, in a sense, it's a mixed outcome. If
Mhm.
you think of it that way, and one of the consequences for the United States, I think, which again a Biden administration, if it wins, no, will have to actually contend with, no, is the idea of rebuilding trust in the United States, no, because right now Donald Trump's policies, no, has raised questions about, well, okay, we're not too sure about where the United States will be going as far as its
Yeah.
I mean its Asia Pacific policies are concerned.
But what about if Joe Biden wins? How much time will he need, or will he require, by your assessment, to fix the mess, if you want to call it, the mess that Donald Trump has created in terms of international relations, trade, multilateralism, etc.
Um, Many of American allies in the region, and in Europe for that matter, no, I think would welcome a Biden administration because it's something that's more predictable. They think that a Biden administration would go in a direction that they are much more comfortable with, that they are familiar with. No, in other words, the kinds of alliance politics, for instance, no, that used to uh, characterize American policies, no, before Donald Trump, no, is expected to come back. So
Mm.
there's that kind of, which basically means that I think most American allies, no, both in Europe as well as here in the Asia Pacific region, no, um, if a Joe Biden, if a Biden administration actually wins or accedes to power, no, there's going to be a lot of goodwill to it, no, in the first few months. Okay,
Mhm.
in other words, there's that expectation that things are going to be brought back to normal, no, and things and so on. But you have to contend with a situation, no, which is, I think, structural in nature, meaning to say that it's not just Donald Trump, although you could actually argue that he actually pushed it. And this is the relationship between the United States and China, right?
Mhm.
If we look at that, no, This is going to be an issue that's going to be front and center, right? As far as countries in the region are actually concerned, they don't want a confrontation between, or they don't want a situation where this relationship between China and the United States not just slides down into an escalation towards towards conflict. I don't think that's going to happen. A Biden administration is certainly not going to look for that. But at the same time, you know, one thing that you really can't avoid is how is a Biden administration going to deal with a resurgent China, no? And given the kind of conditions that the Trump presidency has actually created in relations between the United States and China, that's going to be something that's going to be difficult, and it's going to be something that the United States or no countries in the region will have to continue navigating, not in terms of how they deal with both China and the United States. And
Yeah, but
I don't see the Biden I don't see the Biden administration actually walking back, no, in the current relationship with China.
mhm. Well, I assume they'll just carry on. The question is, how should the Philippines, our national leaders, our current administration, or the members of Senate, the Senate especially, how should we strategize regarding our dealings either with Trump or Biden? Because
Hmm.
some people have told me, Cito, if we don't start figuring out what we want and how we want it with the
Yeah.
next US president in the first 6 months of office, we're just going to throw that chip away.
Right. No, I agree. But at the same time, it's the big thing that you're asking is what is it that we want, right? At this point, like,
Hmm.
do we want the status quo to actually reign? And I think part of the problem with the status quo is that a big part of it is the relationship between the U.S. and China. So, which means that that's one of the big things that we actually have to deal with. And a lot of people are actually saying, a lot of strategists are actually saying that on our own, it's going to be difficult trying to deal with this relationship if we're going to do it um, unilaterally. Mean to say that we're going to strategize by ourselves. We have to actually work with our partners in the region. Basically, you're talking about the ASEAN countries, for instance, no? As a way of building some sort of not a balance, but an attempt to make sure that this relationship between the U.S. and China, no, is somehow going to be reined in by other countries, no, working together. And with ASEAN already in place and the multilateral arrangement set up by ASEAN being a key component of regional politics, no, and relationships, no, then I think we need to work more closely and strategize more closely with our partners in the region.
Okay.
That's one of the things that we should be doing now.
Just as a final question, we've run out of time, Professor Kraft, but as a final question, in your assessment, because if you look at the United States in current time and China in current time, and
Mm,
in actual benefits, assistance, partnership, uh, I get the impression that in general, we didn't really get much from either of these guys. We got VFA from
that's right.
America. We have our
Yeah.
relatives in America. In China, trading, but we kind of just like they're like our big department store, but we still have to
Yeah.
pay it. What's your assessment? I mean, uh, nakikinabang ba tayo sa dalawang to?
Actually, ang ano doon kasi is that hindi dapat either or. Hindi tayo dapat mamili, di ba? That's in fact that's the point about working with our partners. We shouldn't be forced to be placed in a position where we need to choose between the two.
Mm.
Given that, and I think what you're saying is actually correct. Um, it's not a win situation either way, right? It's not a complete win situation. We have to deal with difficulties now when we deal with big countries with like China and the United States. We can't get everything that we want from them. So it's really trying to work out our relationship so that we get the best out of our relationship with either. The
Mhm.
problem for me, no, the problem for me that I think we have to actually deal with, no, is the extent to which we are prepared to deal with a region, a strategic environment, which is going to be dominated by this rivalry between the US and China, which means that to a large extent, no, we'll always be pushed, no, into making choices within either of them. So the question is, how do we strategize so that we're not going
Yeah.
to be pushed in that kind of
I
situation?
guess my question is because kung ilalagay natin if we use Facebook context or language
Yeah,
here,
this is our friend.
status, what is our status? Parang it's complicated,
It's complicated. Yeah,
yeah. Pero
it's complicated.
our president is saying I'm in a relationship with China, but the Filipinos is saying this is
That's right.
complicated. So hindi tayo pwedeng mag-exclusive, hindi pwedeng mag-one side. It has to be about us more
Yeah,
than it will be about them.
exactly. And I think
Okay.
um, um, choosing us means that we shouldn't be choosing either of them, right? Parang ganon yung magiging ano
Mm.
doon.
Well, anyway, thank you very much, Professor Herman Kraft, University of the Philippines Department of Political Science chairperson. Thank you for your inputs today. And let's just pray to God that the outcome will also be a positive for the Philippines. Thank you. Have a good day, Professor.
Thank you very much for having me, Cito.
Okay, that's Professor Herman Kraft of the Department of Political Science, and we will go for a quick break. Breaking news: Trump has won in the state of in Indiana raw. Has won in Indiana. Parang hindi state. Ewan ko. State ba yun? In any case, after the break, we will go to Professor Clarita Carlos and let's find out. Niloloko na ako ng aking ipi kasi nalilito na ako between Indiana and Indianapolis. Okay, he has won in the state of Indiana, Donald Trump, but hindi pa po yan Amerika, okay? Magbibilangan pa, baka abutin pa yan hanggang bukas. In any case, let's go for a quick break. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Okay, our next guest is Professor Clarita Carlos political science professor of the Department of Political Science in the University of the Philippines, Diliman. And good morning to you, Professor. Nice to have you back on the program.
Hi, good morning, Tito.
Okay,
How
ma'am,
are you?
I'm fine, and thank you for asking. I was told by my team that you had issued a statement or made a comment that your sentiments is that Trump presidency or re-election may be good for the region, if not for the Philippines. May we know what led you to that conclusion?
Well, yeah, I posted it on Facebook. I don't know if we're friends there, so you must have seen it. Essentially, I'm really looking at the region more than the
Mhm.
Philippines because we're like 102 in the totem pole of American interest, as Herman, my chairman, has already articulated earlier.
Mhm.
But yes, note, Cito, that it is only in this presidency which has paid attention to our claims in the South China Sea. Before then, all presidents took a hands-off policy in regard to the South China Sea, and if I may mention, the Sabah claim
Mhm.
versus Malaysia. Always
Okay.
the policy was hands-off. Wala silang
Mhm.
pakialam. You deal with it in the, most diplomatic ways, the diplomatic language. It is only Trump who paid attention to the arbitral tribunal. As a matter of fact, the state Secretary Pompeo declared it categorically that, whenever there is an attack, even beyond metropolitan Philippines, then they will be there. Now, to what extent what he declared may in fact be supported, because it's not in the treaty, nor
Mhm.
in the legs of the MDT, we really don't know. That's why, insofar as that particular is concerned, the Trump presidency will be good for us because Biden will, for many reasons, will withdraw because he will be what preoccupied with the burgeoning number of infections and deaths in the U.S. So that's
Mm.
one main reason. And you notice, Sito, I'm sure given the, sometimes abominable actions and articulations of Trump, he really has done a lot. He met with Kim Jong Un when the Americans, all presidents for that matter, including Republicans, did not even want to be a kilometer away from this North Korean leadership. Diba? That's
Yeah.
something.
Mhm.
He also declared that he was open to meeting Iran's Rouhani. That is also something. And then he was going to withdraw all military troops, American troops from the Middle East. So I think on the basis of all those, we have a president who, in his pragmatism, really was dealing with foreign policy in a very different way. And it's good for us.
Yeah, but can you say as a because Professor, I look up to you. You are one of the most qualified in politics, political science. Would you say that Donald Trump and his administration has a legitimate foreign policy na yung ba pwede mong basahin, you could actually figure out because one of the complaints about him is that he's not predictable, he's not consistent. Kumbaga, kung ano yung pumasok sa utak niya, larga.
I disagree
Mhm.
because I've been observing him since day one, when, of course, I was one of the most disappointed because at the time I really wanted Hillary to be president. But then, you have a new president, you deal with him. There is a pattern in the way he conducts his foreign policy. And if I may use a crude term, it's called cashier diplomacy. So he says,
Okay.
Germany, you're supposed to be, the US is defending Europe. So you guys, why are you not putting in 2% as we had agreed of your defense expenditure to defend Europe? So there is a pragmatism, Sito, in the way he conducts foreign policy. Sabi niya, why are
Mhm.
we going to isolate Kim Jong-un? Mitin ko nga tong bata na to at makipag-hamburger ako sa kanya. Remember he said that, no?
Mhm.
Why are we, why is Iran always there, isolated, etc.? And I'm sure some of his advisors had given him the political history of US and Iran, and he said, why don't I meet with Rouhani? Okay, there's a
Mhm.
lot of pragmatism in his foreign policy. And yes, there's a lot of US dollars there too. But if I were an American taxpayer, I would like that because the burden of the defense of Europe is so much on the shoulders of America. And
Mhm.
that's
Well, I think he also pointed out the imbalance with the World Health Organization na ang laki-laki ng kanilang donation pero ang nasusunod yung China.
Yeah, he pointed that out too. And by the way, this is not unique to the WHO. If you look at the other UN organizations, it's the same. Mainly because post-war, after the war, the US was the biggest economy, bar none.
Mhm.
Diba?
Mhm.
Ngayon lang naman nag-rise yung China eh. So suddenly China is now threatening to be a superpower. So dati-rati she did not even have a place in the table. And now she has a place there. She wants to change the rules of the game. So yun na yung bagong geopolitics natin, Cito eh. So
Mhm.
talagang nag-iiba. And I don't know to what extent a Biden presidency will change that, siguro slowly to move more into multilateralism. But I think the dollar sign will still the same, will still remain the same as Trump has articulated it.
Okay, but what about jobs, etc.? Because when Trump went out on this "Bring Back the Jobs to America" program, maraming natakot dito sa Pilipinas, especially in the call center industry and some small industries. Parang feeling nila, nako, pag nag-nationalize na naman yung mga Amerikano, uwian na. And I think for a while, there were some companies that went back to America.
Well, that's good for us. I don't know why our minsan Sito dito meron kang BS Chemistry, BS Biology, minumura ng mga may pinag-uutangan sa credit card. Why are we doing that?
Mhm.
I'm very much against, being the call center of, it's nothing to be proud about. So, something good for me.
Okay, what else can we? Can you repeat that, Professor? We kind of lost the signal.
Well, as I was saying, people are, I don't know the number, Sito, of call center agents, but I have many relatives, nieces and nephews, and they would complain to me and tell me, Tita, minsan gusto ko na magsisigaw at magpatiwakal na dahil minumura ako ng mga bobo na to. Sabi ko, bakit yan ba trabaho nyo? Hindi ba biology graduate ka? Hindi ba chemistry graduate ka? Yun na nga, walang trabaho. That's the reason why, siguro, it will really force our planners, to plan for all these graduates na wag niyong sinasalaksak yan sa call center. So may just as well na umalis sila dito kasi ayoko tayo mag-call center. That's not what we are as a nation. We are a nation of biologists, marine scientists. This is where we are. At hindi tayo nation ng mga katulong, by the way. Diba?
Mhm, mhm.
So, mabuti na yan just as well. Whether Trump will in fact bring back the jobs to America, problema niya yun kasi ang taas-taas ng labor cost doon and makikita naman natin yan eh. Especially very high ang kanilang level of automation and robotization, but they will
Yeah.
move into other areas. Ang hindi ko lang gusto sa kanya, yung kanyang America First, parang minala niya yung kanilang intellectual capital from India, from China. Sayang yun kasi nahalo sa politika yung mga scientists. That's really
Mhm.
a major lament.
Yeah. What about Filipino Americans? Do you believe that the Filipino Americans will have a major say in the outcome of these U.S. elections? Kasi parang we are one of 8 ethnic groups or nationality na roots na medyo kinakampanya nila Kamala Harris at saka ni Joe Biden.
Escosito, alam mo naman ang reality on the ground. May 5 ka lang Pilipinong tao, 2 na organization mo. Tingnan mo yung Alumni Association natin sa Vancouver. 2 beses ako nag-speech doon. Kasi bakit sabi ko, may isa sa umaga, may isa sa hapon. Ang liit-liit ng Vancouver. You know how it is.
Profesora, muntik na akong masamid sa sinabi mo. Naalala ko tuloy yung kasabihan sa Amerika, pag may beauty pageant at may natalo, kinabukasan may bagong kapalit na organisasyon. No, but that is
Ganyan.
so
Ganyan.
real.
So it's the same.
Yeah, okay. It's so real because these organizations, these political organizations, pick and choose based on the number of organizations. Kahit na dadalawa ang member ng organization na yon, tama po kayo.
Pero Sito, oo, it's just as well na ayoko kasing magkaroon ng ayoko ng mga hyphenated nationality, Filipino
Yeah,
Americans, no?
yeah.
Oo. So, it's just as well na wag nilang gawing parang isang collective ang Filipino Americans kasi they are diverse and iba-iba sila ng pananaw, etc. They're just Americans, no?
Mhm.
And I don't know the future politics will be along ethnic or minority community lines. The future politics will really be according to what we need, what the young people need. Kasi yung demographics nila all over the world, Sito, mga kabataan talaga eh. They can actually reshape the world, the young people, if they only turn out to vote,
Yeah. Well, speaking of all of that, yung pinag-uusapan natin kanina, sabi ni Professor Herman Kraft na paano na nga ba 'yon? It's the direction of government is based on a political party's orientation or fundamentals. Now, in 2016, you wanted Hillary Clinton to become president. She was a Democrat, if I'm not mistaken, and Trump is a Republican. Paano ba ang mangyayari kung party politics ang nasusunod or party platform ang nasusunod? Kasi sabi kanina ni Professor Kraft, medyo naging all about Trump na nga itong last 4 years. But if it were about party politics, how would the picture be different?
It will not be different, and that is the saddest part about democracy. Alam mo naman, kopya-kopya lang tayo sa Amerika. Ang constitution nga natin, kinopya natin dyan, no? That's why we have a Senate na dapat wala niyan. But that aside, whenever I discuss this in class, palagi kong sinasabi, offhand, I preface my discussion by saying that the two-party system in the United States is something that should not be emulated. Huwag mo yung kopyahin yun. Kasi sobrang yung rigid nun that never mind the issue area, they will vote according to party lines. No? Tignan mo naman yung stimulus package na dapat bipartisan yan. Anong ginawa nila? Hinostage nila sa election. Because everybody will, listen to Pelosi or listen to, sino ba sa head ng ng kanilang Senate, yung majority doon. It's always along party lines. And in the process, political parties are supposed to be the aggregators of the citizens' interests. Gitna yan ng governor at saka governed tayo yung governed. But if the political parties are so rigidly categorized along issue areas, then it is the public who will suffer, really. So there are many cases where they have to be non-partisan. Ito, stimulus package, climate change, no? Hindi na pwede ngayon yung cleavages. We have so many wedges in our society all over the world. Oh, parang the walls that we have built. And the most sinister part about that, Cito, the walls are in the mind Yung walls na, madali mo naman buwagin yan makuha ka lang ng But the walls in the mind are really the more sinister ones kasi yun ang nag-persist. And ito, siguro, both Biden and Trump, wag na lang sabihin na si Trump lang ang nangialam ng ganyan, gumawa ng ganyan. They really were the ones who are driving the wedges in American society. Sobrang lang sila, ang dami ng wedges niyan, no?
Yeah, but how does that impact us here in the Philippines?
Nothing. The impact is that wag mong gayahin yung nandun.
Yeah, well,
Kasi
good.
di ba, I have been campaigning for us to move into parliamentary system. Now that you have a very broken political party system here, Cito, more likely we will have a multi-party setup even when we decide to adopt a parliamentary system. And over time, these parties will discipline themselves because that is what the institutional setting will compel them to do, no? And given that there are not really, wala na tayong pinapag-awayan ngayon ideology-wise, no? The ideology is dead, and never mind that so-called communists is still, are parlaying a certain kind of ideology, which is wag na lang, bad word na Anyhow, so the political parties now, they really have changed also their political character. character, no? Hindi noon na pag may ano kong program of government, ito lang X party vis-a-vis Y party. No. In fact, the program of government, you will notice, they only differ in granularity, Cito.
Yeah.
Hindi na sila nag-iiba eh. I mean, I don't know. How do you deal with 26 million poor? There is no democratic, there is no socialist way of dealing with. There is just a effective and efficient way. No, wala na eh. Nag-merge na yung dating strict categories of parties. Wala na rin yun.
Okay,
Now the parties will link along functional lines, no?
May sinabi ka, Professor, na has always been in my mind, yung gaya-gaya puto maya mentality. Pag anong ginawa sa Amerika, gagayahin dito, yung hate campaign, yung cyberbullying, that was all copied during the 2016 election, etc. And it was copied globally. Dito sa last election na ito, last campaign, may nakita ka bang practice that should not be tolerated by any Filipino whatsoever? Kasi parang, di ba, ang daming naging issue, Black Lives Matter, Me Too vote, etc. Pero thankfully, hindi masyadong pumutok ito yung nagsisiraan na sa internet.
Yeah, I think again following the dictum that we should not just be copying, willy-nilly. Yung the othering in America, yung the other, no, where the other you think of the other as inferior to you, you look down upon them. Palagay ko, yun talaga will not resonate with us. Because we're basically a good people, by the way, Cito. Even all the mga ating mga reklamo. Mabait tayong tao. We're not bad people, no? And we will not see the kinds of cleavages na nakikita natin sa Amerika, no? Ang talagang ayaw na ayaw ko sa kanila, yung kabastusan nila, yung they don't allow you to finish your sentences. That one, wag natin kopyahin. Kasi we're still, I'm sure, Cito, nakita mo sa UP, despite the fact na ang dami niyang mag-challenge sa akin bilang professor, hinihintay nilang matapos ako magsalita. Hindi yung bigla na lang sila sisigaw-sigaw doon sa from where they're seated. Which, kala nila cute yun doon sa Amerika. It's not. No? And I'm glad we're not copying that. No?
Kumbaga, fundamentally, the basic issue is manners and respect. And Filipinos have that. Kahit hindi nakatapos yung iba, may pinag-aralan pa rin.
Yeah, we're so differential. Kasi nasa atin pa yun rin yung yung Confucian ethic, di ba? Filial piety. And I like that, no? I'm sure, I mean, taga-UP ka din, Cito. Nakita mo bang may nang babastos ng professor dyan, yung hindi pinapatapos yung sentence? No. We have our professors. Meron pa tayong deference sa ating mga professor. And I like that. Ibig sabihin, hindi natin didismantle ang ating mga authority structures. And that is very, very important in a democracy. Because the moment you start dismantling your authority structures, unahin mo sa bahay, ang apo ko pag nagsagot sa akin, sasampalin ko siya. Mga ganun ba? Unahin mo sa bahay na, teka muna, sino ba yung decision maker dito, ha? At sino yung nakaupo sa kabisera? Yung nakaupo sa kabisera, miski sa sitting arrangement dito, di ba? Halatang halata dyan, And that one is good. Huwag nila sabihing pangit yung filial piety. No, it is good for the order in society.
You know, I picked up something from the US elections that I really hope will happen in the Philippines. Yung bang I voted today campaign. Everybody, regardless of whether you are Democrat, Republican, rich or poor, artista, hindi ka superstar, everybody seemed to be posting, campaigning that regardless of who you like or who you want, please go out and vote. Parang sabi ko, we should really have that here in the Philippines in the next election para hindi yung only 60% or 70%. Tuwan-tuwa na tayo, 70% ang bumoto. Karamihan, mga mga...
Kami, elderly.
Elderly. Okay.
Ayan, kami yung biggest number of turnout eh. Pero alam mo, counterintuitively, it is also better for democracy for certain people to be in the margins, to be alienated, in a manner of speaking. Why? At mo, okay lang yung 40%, 60%. Kasi kung lahat yan nagsisigawan, ilan ba yung qualified voters sa'tin? 64 million, 'di ba? Lalaki pa yon dahil nagre-register sila. Aba'y hindi makakaya ng sistema yung demand. Kaya pabayaan mong iba nasa margins, 'no? Ang tawag namin nun alienated ka muna, 'no? Huwag ka na munang
Mhm.
sumawsaw diyan. So, okay lang na 60%, ano ba yung turnout last time sa atin, 'no? Okay lang yun,
Mhm.
mag-turnout. In fact, the best democracy is where very few people are in fact, demanding certain things. Dahil hindi ka kumikibo, ibig sabihin, there is a level of satisfaction na, huwag ka ng
Sa
huwag ka ng
level of satisfaction or parang indifference na? Kasi some people were saying in the last election, yung mga may pinag-aralan, yung mga expert, yung mga may kaya, marami hindi bumoto.
Yeah, but, kasi yung mga hindi naman bumoto 'no, ah, parang something like it's not so much indifference, parang something like, Cito, I can live with that. You don't
Mhm.
necessarily agree with it, but you can live with it. Yung hindi ka makipag-away na lang, sige na, okay lang yan, ano. Like kami
Mhm.
'di ba magbobotohan na tayo sa 2022 sa May 'no.
Yes,
Sana
ma'am.
gusto ko dahil dito ako nagbo-vote sa ating Cito, dahil nandito ako sa campus, gusto ko yung LM, this is my voting area magbukas sana ng 6:00 kasi maaga akong gumising. Ayaw ko pipila-pila dun dahil elderly nga ako. Yung mga
Mhm.
magbigay sila ng konting alaga sa aming mga elderly 'no, para
Mhm.
maaga pa nagboto na ako. And yun nga, pinu-push din namin yung e-voting ba, Cito,
Mhm.
nagbabangko ka nga sa electronic tapos pagboto mo lang, hindi mo magawa yun, ako tamad na maglakad na, Gusto ko dito lang sa laptop ko magvo-vote ako, yung mga gano'n.
Naku, ma'am, kung pwede ako naman ang magbibigay sa iyo ng assignment.
Yeah.
Pakigawa naman kami ng listahan na mga dapat gawin natin for the next election, and I promise you we will start promoting it on agenda and on our column sa Philippine Star. And syempre, imbitahin
That's
ka
great.
namin. No, because we seriously want to do this. We want to really start early and start finding out yung mga, para malaman natin sino ba yung may nagbabalak-balak tumakbo dyan, interrogate na natin bago pa sa kampanya. Kasi maaga pa lang
Yeah.
magkaalaman na.
Mm.
Okay.
Ako nga, oo, nalulungkot nga ako Sito kasi one of my meron deep throat na nagsabi sa akin yan, fairly reliable, na ngayon ay nagne-negotiate na sa presyo ng, alam mo na, ng position. So sabi ko, "Gano'n ba? 'Di wala pala akong diyan dahil wala naman akong salapi." So, but that's the reality on the
Alam
ground.
nyo ma'am, hindi yung wallet nyo yung binabantayan ng tao eh. Ang
Ano?
binabantayan ng tao yung kombinasyon ng talas ng isip nyo at saka talas ng bibig nyo. Yun ang kinakatakutan. So, we will look forward to that. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. And
Sige,
thank
sige.
you. Thank,
Always a
thank,
pleasure, always a
Th-
pleasure.
Thank you for making me laugh tungkol dun sa dala-dalawang organisasyon mabilis magtayo. Thank you very much.
Sige, have a good
Okay.
day.
You too, ma'am. That's Professor Clarita Carlos. Alam niyo po, sad as it may seem, it is a cultural reality and a truth, no? Particularly abroad, where Filipinos medyo may fiesta sila, may beauty pageant sila, or may contest, etc. In one organization. And sadly, when someone loses and is dissatisfied with the results, the outcome, or whatever, they will go and put up their own organization. Kanya maraming Filipino Chamber of ganito, association of this ganito sa abroad, no? Whether it's in America, ewan ko sa Canada, dahil minsan lang ako nakatungtong sa Canada. In any case, we'll go for a quick break. When we come back, let's speak with an expert on cybersecurity, because that is going to be our future. Well, it is now our concern. Many of you are worried about the fact that you do online banking, online transactions. Many of your businesses are online now. And katulad niyan, kahapon, yung ABS-CBN online portal na-hack. So parang nasa internet na lang, kinakana pa sila. We'll be right back here on Agenda. Well, welcome back to the program agenda. I'm Cito Beltran, and you are watching us via Signal TV, channels 8 and 250, as well as on Facebook.com/OneNewsPH and on YouTube, OneNewsPH. And we will now go to our third and final interview for the morning. And I have to confess, when I read up this gentleman's profile as well as the topic that we are supposed to discuss, it's one of those whoosh moments. You know, it's like a duh. If there's something that makes me feel stupid, it's one of this. But nonetheless, it is something that all of us need to pay attention to, and that is cybersecurity. Just as a recap, as the coronavirus pandemic forced many to work from home, criminals seem to have adapted to the new situation and are also increasingly working remotely and causing an upward trend in cybercrime. Now, elderly and non-tech savvy population are the most victims of the cybercrime. Social engineering and phishing attacks remain two of the most common crimes on the web, according to Europol. Now let's bring in the Director for Cybercrime Research of Trend Micro. He also lectures for Master of Science modules in malware analysis of the University College Dublin and Cork Institute of Technology. Let's bring in Mr. Robert McCardle. Robert, good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, it's good. I suppose, am I correct? You're Irish?
I am indeed, which is why
Okay.
it's still dark here on this side of the planet.
Oh, I am so sorry about this, Robert, because I understand where you're coming from. My daughter is based in the Netherlands, and so it is an ungodly hour. But you know, I teach my students for public policy and public management that if the interviewer does not know a darn thing about what you're talking about, take advantage. So, Robert, please take advantage.
Fair enough. So as you introduced me, my field of study is cybercrime. So essentially talking about exactly the kind of crimes that you would be used to in the physical world. Of course, there are many crimes that happen on the virtual world or the internet as well. So crime goes to wherever the money is, wherever technology is, and wherever society is. So within that, I'm heading up a team within Trend Micro, which are specifically tasked with looking at the next 1 to 2 years of where we think cybercrime will evolve to from where it is today. And we also are the team that do criminal investigations. So we would do investigations of cyber criminals wherever they are in the world, and then work with international law enforcement to see if we can track those individuals down, basically, and hopefully make the internet a slightly safer place today than it was yesterday or in the past. That's the kind of background of the team.
Okay, now what essentially have you observed? Because when you said track down criminals, I know of one gentleman who really, just like in the movie, but this was more cyber related. He literally tracked his target who had victimized his daughter, and he even got some Israeli experts to spend about a year or 2 years to find this joker, and they finally grabbed him and threw him in jail. But in your case with Trend Micro, what are the general serious problems that are brought to Trend Micro, or what does Trend Micro really spend so much time on nowadays?
Sure. So cybercrime constantly evolves, just like crime itself does. So like standard crime that you would see 5 years ago is going to be slightly different than it is now. Cybercrime is no different. In fact, if anything, cybercrime evolves a little bit faster than traditional real world crime, if you like. So our main goal in Trend Micro is we have various services that we provide and various products that we use to help secure organizations who want to protect from that. So in the same way as in the real world, you might buy an alarm for your house, right? Or you have, of course, the police services who patrol the streets and make sure that things are safe. In the cybercrime world, if you have an organization, the equivalent of the security guards you might have at the front desk would be a security product that is there to make sure no malware can get in through the front door, or computer viruses, as they're also called. And that's essentially our primary role, is supplying many different types of offerings for large customers, for home users like myself and yourself, and everything in between, to help protect them, so that just like in the real world, you should be able to go down the street and not be expecting for anything to happen to you, any violent crime or mugging or something like that. In the virtual world, the same should be true. You should be able to go online, you should be able to bank, you should be able to buy the Christmas presents on an online website, all knowing that chances are high that you won't be defrauded in any case. Of course, just like in the physical world, there will be bad alleys you shouldn't go down, but you can't completely eliminate crime.
Okay, how conscious are people about cybersecurity? Because I've been hearing of people putting up companies online left and right here in the Philippines, and I'm like, I do hope you get a very reliable service provider on the internet. B, I do hope you put in some security features in your setup, because all the hard work is just going to go down the drain. But I don't know. That are people more conscious of cybersecurity now?
They are definitely within the business space. They have gotten more aware of it. Within the, let's say, home user space, it varies a little bit. Normally, if they've had some incident in the past, then they will realize, actually, it might be a good idea for me to have something. But in the business world, the catch there is, of course, you have technology businesses which would have technology departments and security teams and so on, and they will be quite well versed in this. But the vast majority of businesses in this world don't work in that instance, right? They manufacture parts for a car, or they make whatever it is that their business model is. And of course, in doing that, they have computers and they have people online on the internet every day, so they're susceptible to this type of crime. But it's not their core business. So those are the ones that are probably most susceptible, because they're just as much at risk because they're on the internet, but it's not their core business to protect themselves from essentially very very advanced attackers in a lot of cases.
Okay. Is there the distinction between just a standard cybersecurity app versus the products that your company, Trend Micro, is it that produces for clients, or do you guys what's the term? Like I said, this is all going by me. Manufacture or put together for clients.
So the key to any security is you kind of tailor security to the threat that you're facing, right? And that's the same in the real world, right? So if you were defending, a country, right, as an army, you defend in a certain way depending on who's going to threaten you. So in the cybercrime world, if your company is, much larger, let's say you have offices over multiple different buildings and so on, you would need certain solutions to make sure that, data can travel safely between them. If you are all in one location, or you heavily make use of online services, you would use other ones. So the whole idea is we have very many different tailored services for different sorts of threat scenarios. And then you work out what is most likely to affect your company. So let's take an example of an accountancy firm, for example, right? For them, probably the banking records and things they may have on file for their customers is the crown jewels they absolutely have to protect at all costs. Yeah. Whereas if you look at, let's say, a factory network, the banking details they have, of course, is valuable to an attacker, but for them, the factory line cannot stop under any circumstances. It has to keep going because that's how they make their money. So they're protecting something very different, and you kind of tailor a solution to them in that case by stitching together various products.
Okay, now many schools, hospitals, what level of risk are they at? Because there are schools especially in this part of the world who say, "Oh, who would want to hack us? Who would want to attack us?" But I'm like, if somebody gets a hold of all of those files or jams up your processes in the hospital, you are totally, in the outhouse.
Well, hospitals in particular are a very high-risk environment for cybercrime, from the point of view that they tend to be quite well connected from a computer point of view these days, so that doctors can easily access records in any of the wards and so on. But at the same time, hospitals and almost everywhere in the world are slightly underfinanced. And the last thing that the money will go into is security, as opposed to, another X-ray machine or extra supplies and so on. So criminals know this, that, however, if you attack a hospital, for example, and you, let's say, seize control of all the machines and stop them working to the point where you say, if you want any of these MRI machines, any of the records accessible again, you need to pay us millions of dollars. And the thing is, because a hospital is mostly backed by a government, they can afford to pay it. Right, so they don't want to pay it, of course, but if the alternative is people actually getting no treatment, then that's something they will do. In fact, there was a case just earlier this year in Germany of one of the first times we've had cybercrime directly cause a death of a person. So the cyber criminals had taken over actually a university network. The university had a hospital attached to it, kind of research hospital. And as a result of the way they'd taken it over and essentially ransomed the building, all of the machines in that hospital were no longer accessible. And they had a case of somebody coming in for emergency surgery who could not be operated on because they couldn't process them. And the person had to be taken to another hospital. Unfortunately, didn't get there in time and died directly because the building was offline from the cybercrime attack.
Okay, I don't want to super highlight cyber crime. I would also like the criminals out there to get a picture that they will be caught. In this case, were the criminals caught? Because many of the cases I've heard of, the authorities managed somehow to track down the criminal. In this particular case earlier this year in Germany, were they able to find these criminals?
So it's still ongoing, that case. The perpetrators in that particular case have not been caught yet. We have seen some successes where people have been caught and arrested in the past. Cybercrime, though, is a unique crime in that it's actually particularly difficult to catch people for a couple of reasons. If you think of a normal crime, like a murder on the streets of Manila, the victim is in Manila, clearly. The attacker was clearly there as well. And the scene of the crime, everything happened in that one block, wherever the crime scene was. If you take a cybercrime attack against somebody in Manila, you could have the victim is in the Philippines. Maybe the server that belonged to them was sitting in the United States because they rent a server from there. The attacker could have been coming from a third country. So immediately before you do anything, you have 3 law enforcement agencies who have to sync up. And that's at a minimum. That's before the attackers do anything on top to make life more difficult. So it's actually quite difficult to prosecute cybercrime, but we are, as an industry, getting better at doing it by companies such as yourself and Trend Micro partnering with law enforcement and using our knowledge and their skills and also the powers that they have of arrest and investigation, putting those together to see can we track these individuals down.
Okay, how many? I mean, not how many, but how popular are your services here in the Philippines? Because evidently you have a Philippine presence. I mean, globally now because of the internet, many firms like you can be all over the country. But have you become? Are you established in the Philippines in terms of people being more knowledgeable about cybersecurity, or are we still not realizing the potential?
So I think within the Philippines is actually one of our largest centers within the entire company. It's one of the places we've invested heavily in for decades now at this point. So I think it may be our largest office that we have in Trend Micro, or if not, it is certainly in the top 1 or 2. So we have a big center down there in Ortigas, which I have gotten to visit multiple times. By far my favorite location to travel to within the company is the Philippines. And then within that, I mean, we always try to raise awareness, not just for company reasons and being able to, hire people easier and things like that, but also just as our corporate social responsibility, it's important for us to raise that knowledge. And one of the things we're actually doing coming up now in actually next week, so November 10th to 12th, we have our annual conference we run in the Philippines called Decode. So it's decodeph.com, where we have 3 days for multiple tracks of people talking about all elements of cybersecurity to help raise that awareness. And we got a very good turnout last year, a lot of very interesting questions. So it's starting to get out there, but you have to, it's a constant thing to remind people of this because it's not their daily life, right? So it's important to make them aware.
Well, that of course will all be via internet, right? It's not going to be.
It will indeed, yes. Last year was a lot of fun. It was a great event, and there was a lot of nice social activities and the whole thing that go with it. This year, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, that is not happening. But as a result, we've taken advantage of it, and some speakers that we would have had a hard time to bring to the Philippines last year can now, of course, dial in from anywhere in the world. So as a result, we have a very good lineup. We've people from Interpol, we've people from the United Nations, former advisors to the White House in cybersecurity, and a host of different researchers from the Philippines themselves speaking at it. So it's going to be a very interesting event.
Robert, just out of curiosity, because you mentioned your location right now, I'm disturbing you at an ungodly hour. I feel so guilty. But will that event be recorded and placed on YouTube for people who might not be available to watch it? Because not all CEOs work on the same time zone or time schedule, and they might be very interested, and we would be gladly promote it.
Yeah, that's exactly the plan. The event will, of course, run live, first of all, and then it will be available with videos that can be available on demand afterwards. And that tends to work well in today's world, because a lot of us are working from home now, and it's extremely busy. And you mightn't have a whole day block that normally you could go to an event and say, for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of that week, I'm going to this thing. But in today's world, it's very hard to take full days off when you're at home. So you tend to cherry pick maybe the talks. So I'll see this talk, then I'm going to do some email for an hour, then I'll watch that talk, and maybe I'll come back and watch the one I missed later on demand. So yeah, absolutely, they'll be available on demand as well.
Well, we appreciate you joining us this morning or this evening in your time, and I'm sure my daughter will watch that, because she's now studying safety and security in the Netherlands. So that'll be a top pick in her viewing list. In any case, thank you very much for joining us, Robert, and we do hope to see you in person here in Manila or in the Philippines one of these days. Please have a restful evening. My apologies for the disruption, and do take care.
No problem. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, that's Mr. Robert McCardle. He is the Director for Cybercrime Research, Trend Micro. Okay, breaking news. Biden wins in Vermont, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Maryland, and Delaware. So, hindi pa po tapos ang boxing. I just really don't, as far as the U.S. elections are concerned, it ain't over until the fat lady sings, whatever that means. I have to look that up. I don't know what that means. But in any case, thank you for joining us today. It's been very interesting, educational, and parts of it were funny and parts of it were very serious. But nonetheless, that's what we hope to achieve. And thank you to the agenda team for always looking up for a good mix. In any case, also thank you to all of you who have been praying for my daughter Hannah, who tested positive for COVID in the Netherlands. She remains asymptomatic, and we really covet your prayers. And we thank you for joining us in this hour of stress, if you want to call it that. And our prayers go to all of you out there who are also facing challenges, whether it's because of the typhoon, separation from loved ones, whether it's a disease or your financial concerns. I just want to leave you with this one reassurance. Please go to the book of Jonah in the Bible, the 2nd chapter. When I was just about ready to break down after finding out about my daughter's positive test, I opened that book and I said, Lord, I need a word. And the 2nd chapter of the book of Jonah was such a quick reply from God. Basically, he when everything was just over and done with, the Lord heard our prayer. Thank you very much. Read the book. Have a good day. Take care of yourselves, and God bless all of you.